Hello, 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 and hello to you, my friends of the TubeU. How are you doing? How are you keeping? Are you alright? You're still sane? You're still alive? You're still everything working still? And you managed to keep track of which day it is? Getting a bit tricky, isn't it, if you're not doing a lot to distinguish from one day to the next, really. I've been lucky, to be honest. I've been quite busy. I've been weirdly busy. Still am. Seems to be getting busier and busier each day, which is nice in one sense, I suppose. So yeah, here we are. I haven't even. It's now getting so far into this lockdown that I can't remember off the top of my head which week we've just been through. Is it week 10 now? This one, I think this is supposed to be the week 10 review. I got it wrong last time in the actual video, but in my sort of comment section down below that I write, description section, sorry, I got it right. It was week 9 last time, I think I was doing, so this should be week 10. If I'm wrong, I apologise. I'm having trouble keeping track of the weeks now, to be honest. I think I complained last time that it seemed to be all over with the hot weather and people coming out, and unofficially, And this week just gone, it's been announced, I think, certainly in England and now here in Wales, that the restrictions are now being sort of started to be lifted. So, in a sense, for a lot of people, it's starting to be over. But if you're, I love this new word. These new words creep in. I don't know where they come from. Suddenly everyone's like, if you're what was self-isolating but is now being called shielding for some reason. I don't know if that means. I don't know if they're doing that for the usual reason because it seems to sound a bit nicer than self-isolating. Because of course, isolating sounds oppressive and not very nice, and connotations of loneliness, and of course it is, cut off from society and your friends and your family. But shielding sounds a bit nicer. It's a bit like shell shock, as George Carlin, the great American stand-up comedian, late stand-up comedian, shell shock, as he used to say, turned into what was it? Oh God, what do they call it now? PTSD. That's right. Shell shock sounds nasty. Sounds like the sounds of the guns themselves. Nice straightforward description. Post-traumatic stress disorder. It's longer. It's sort of the shock bit's been taken out. We tend to do this with our language, don't we? If it's something not very nice or scary, tend to sanitise it a little bit with the language. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, well, I won't go over the what's been happening in week 10, if it is week 10. It's gone. This is Wednesday now, so I'm a few days later than usual doing this. It's usually on a Monday night, because that's lockdown was actually officially announced on a Monday evening 10 weeks ago. So yeah, we've had the whole Dominic Cummings thing, and will he resign? No, I'm not going to resign. Will you sack him? Boris Johnson? No, I'm not going to sack him. All of that, that's all been seems to have more or less gone. Restrictions being lifted, and then of course the big news, which is, aside from COVID, now all around the world from the US, is the murder of George Floyd in the US. Yet another murder, really, at the hands of I'm obviously going to say police officers, but a certain type of police officer over in the US, and that's been very interesting to watch, because and the aftermath and the anger and the protests and riots and all that sort of stuff. And obviously Trump's famous response that, if the looting starts, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, all this sort of stuff. His tweet, wasn't it, I think? Because, I pay for years, or at least past 4 years, or longer than that. I pay about as much attention, give as much of my time over to what's happening over in the US and the news there, politically and socially. And obviously, when I'm researching and reading papers and other academics' work, a lot of it's from the US, so a lot of it's social, to do with crime, education, health, and all of that, usual sort of sociological sort of stuff, and comparing it to what I'm interested in here, in those those different areas. So I think I'm, compared to maybe most people in the UK, I'm pretty clued up as to who's who, what's going on in the US politically, and in those sort of terms, really. I wouldn't call myself an expert, because I don't think I am. But yeah, for all the 4 years I've been following, not the mainstream news there, because I don't watch the mainstream news here, but independent journalists and journalism, every single week on average, I'd say, I hear about, or it's reported about, at least 2 to 3 African Americans being murdered by the police, or those psychopaths who were hunting down that poor bloody jogger. Never saw that a few weeks back in the US. And of course, when I hear about them, what I think is, well, these are the most obviously, blatantly horrific examples of murder by the state, basically. They're the most what's the word, overt, the most sort of obvious. So if I'm hearing about these, what about all of the deaths, or the abuses of human rights, abuses of power, that you don't hear about, that we're not hearing about on the news? Logic would sort of suggest that there's probably going to be more of that going on. And I watched the debate this morning on Good Morning Britain, is it, I think, or with Piers Morgan and that lady Susanna, whatever, and they had I think it was 3 contributors on, and one of the contributors pointed out that of course there's not just one type of it's most people's experience, I'm assuming, in the US and here, and she's saying this, is that not everybody's obviously killed by the police, or killed by, murdered by institutionally prejudiced parts of, or individually prejudiced parts of power, here or there. There's the majority of racism is much more subtle, is much quieter, goes unnoticed, goes unreported, is a daily occurrence. I would not want to be, because of, if you just read any basic academic paper on this, for people who have done the research, looked at the numbers, I would not want to, in this sense, be a young or middle-aged black man or black woman in this country, particularly in a major city, let alone over in the US, because I know I would be harassed every time I left my house, or left where I lived, to go to work, or to go for a walk, or whatever, go out for dinner, there's a huge likelihood that I would be harassed one way or another. Very likely. And harassed at best, injured or killed at worst. Now, that's the point I'm going to make about. Yes, it's obvious. There's obvious. There's historical and current horrors that, for want of a better term, BAME members of our community and the communities over in the US have to face every single day. That I, as a middle-aged white British man, don't have to. But there are also, and I think this feeds into the wider context of what's been happening in the US and here, because there have been protests here as well, in sympathy, of course, in solidarity. Because yes, it's about this week. What's happened has been about the murder of George Floyd. Of course, it's been sparked by that incident, but it's not just about that incident. It's not solely about the murder of George Floyd. Of course, what it is really the final straw that broke the camel's back. I think that's quite evident from the area. The protesters aren't they're not just black Americans, and they're not just black British protesters here. It's a mixture of people, a mixture of all colours, and ethnicities. It's a mixture of people who are disgusted by what's happening and what's happened, and are saying that's enough, because of course, this is what I'm trying to lead on to the next thing is. The whole point is, aside from the actual obvious cultural and race differences that the ruling sort of classes want to remind us about and harass people over and everything, the shared thing we all have, of course, is that white, black, Asian, man, woman, when you're not part of the ruling elite, you're part of us, the people that are subject to the whims and abuses from the ruling elite, I wish I was more eloquent and explaining what's going on in my own time, get out of my head, basically. I can be very sort of ham-tongued sometimes. So what I'm talking about really is class, If you're working class, and I hate the term, but the term that sort of sprung up from the ruling elite, the sort of, the supposed underclass and all this sort of stuff, which they usually mean by, when there's that, they're usually talking about people who are working class, but are out of work, basically, because we can't get any, we're all, and should all be, in solidarity together, in my personal opinion, in my humble opinion. We should all be in solidarity together as forget geography for a minute, as a working class international community. That's the whole point of the labour movement, the international labour movement. That's the whole point of the international union movement 100 years ago. They all sort of started, a century ago, which unfortunately in both our countries has basically sold out. That's what the powerful and rich have done. They've on the whole bought both movements. I'm very depressed to say and admit, and here we find ourselves, people being murdered on a regular basis because of seemingly the colour of their skin. The people that do it are quite often not well, quite often not even charged. If they're charged, not sent to jail, no serious consequences for them. Happens time and time again. In the UK, there's some horrific cases that have happened. Here, it's not as if we're great here and it's just a horror show over in America. Of course, that's not the case. Which I think, again, I reiterate my point, which is that it's about, sorry, in large part, the anger and the way the anger is being directed is from people who have no voice, no representation, no say, no choices, because and I'd like to say we as a working class, as those not part of the ruling class, don't have representation within the. We were supposed to. As again, that was supposed to be the point of the Democrats. That was supposed to be the point of the Labour Party. That's what they were set up for. Unfortunately, I think it's taken a long time for people to realise. Some people to realise. I think quite a few of us already knew it, but from some people to realise recently that they've been bought. They've been bought out quite some time ago. So I'll leave that one there. That's my own personal opinions. I don't know what you think, but please comment down below. Let me know what you think. I'd be interested to read your comments. Very interested. But yeah, solidarity and all, love and my friendship to anyone, anywhere, suffering because of abuses of power. Yes, I'll try to keep it a bit shorter today. My second point. Yesterday, I watched a video, of an interview actually, of being an ex-Labour, ex-Labour councillor, someone that was absolutely as deep into the Labour Labour grassroots momentum stuff, People's Assembly, as you can be up here in North East Wales, at all levels, organising on the streets, protest every single week for years. I was very interested to watch what was billed as Jeremy Corbyn's first full frank interview since the loss of the general elections 6 months ago. Is it 6 months ago now? Yeah, over 6 months, isn't it? I was interested to see what he personally thinks about the whole 4.5 years and the election loss, and what his analysis of it all was. And I have to say, I got a very strong impression for the first time ever listening to him, to be honest, because he was in his own office, his own constituency office, down in where does he represent? I keep forgetting. Don't know London very well. One of the nicer, leafier parts of London, of course. It'll come to me. And he was obviously very relaxed and very happy. Peter O'Born was there, who's quite a famous, well-known, I suppose, conservative, with a small c, journalist. There was another editor of, I can't remember now. I think another publication, I'm not sure. I'm all sort of, I think, more centre-left leaning one. I can't quite remember who that was. But anyway, they were asking him all about the 5 years. They were asking him about the now well-known coup within Labour, or attempts within Labour from the General Secretary and McNichol, and almost all other senior officers at that time during the 2017 campaign, clearly undermining Labour's chances of winning, his chances of winning, because he didn't want us to win. He didn't, and to my amazement, he didn't want to really accept that was the case or acknowledge that, or he talked about the executive within Labour, the NEC and all that, being at that level, being, what did he call it? Slow-footed or something in understanding what was going on at grassroots and all this sort of stuff, what they were trying to do. And I won't get into the minutiae because you might not be a Labour person, so obviously this would be of use to you. But the impression I came away with very strongly was that I watched him and I listened to him and I thought, this man, in my opinion, watching this, clearly never expected to be, or worse, even wanted to actually be, Prime Minister. That's my takeaway sort of feeling from all of this, watching that. And I thought, I've seen him for years talk about, the first time I've seen him something where he sort of says without saying, I didn't really want to be Prime Minister. Now, if that's the case, if I'm right, I'm very angry. Very angry. Because if that was his mindset, if that's what he was thinking, if that was always the case throughout the 4.5 years where I bloody murdered myself, other people I know killed themselves every single week out on the street, getting attacked constantly, but fighting, not because I was some sort of blind Labour follower, not because I was some sort of bloody I hate saying this because it upsets some of my friends, shirt-wearing Corbynista or anything like that. I was doing it, and my regular friends that were doing it, because I use this phrase, we have a dog in the race. The changes that would have come, particularly to the welfare benefit system, workers' rights, all of that sort of stuff, legal aid being brought back in, all of that would have transformed my life, my family's lives, the lives of so many people that I represent here, and so many people I know, totally transformed them for the better. No question. Absolutely no question. Which is why I fought so hard. But to realise yesterday, watching him, listening to him, that actually he never intended, it wasn't his intention to actually win and get those things imposed. He just seemed content and more than happy that he changed the narrative and the agenda within the Labour Party for 4 years, try to make it a bit more of a grassroots. But he didn't seem to understand, and he was asked this question, that that was fine if that's what happened then, and that was only to a very very limited extent, or else we wouldn't have been beaten by the top-down structures. So that wasn't entirely successful anyway. But of course now that's all being reversed, as much as it possibly can, by Keir Starmer and the centre right, who are back in charge again of Labour now. They're sort of the Blairite light now. So if that's what he was just trying to do, if that's all he was trying to do for the 4 years, was to try and make his mark on the UK Labour Party and the way it's run and its focus, but that's all he really wanted to do, why didn't he just tell it? Why did he run to be the leader? He kept going on about, when he was asked about his leadership style and why he hadn't done certain things and all this sort of stuff, basically he hadn't really fought back against all of the smears, because there were smears, there were tons of smears and lies about him personally and about us, that was sort of doing all the work down on the ground, why he hadn't done what you think someone would normally do and you know, fight back, you know, threaten to or sue people that call him a racist, you know, just, you know, basic things like that. And of course he's very zen, it's all zen and, you know, all very sort of Gandhi-like with him, isn't it, you know. And he sort of laughed that off. So I've always known about the sort of lack of fight. It's always amused me, I've known about it. But if that's all he was aiming to do and is content with that now, what, you know, why didn't he? Well, why did he run? Why did he put himself forward? Yeah, he kept talking about if I'd have done this and done that, if I'd expelled this person, or if I'd come down on that person or Ian McNichol for and the others, chief executive, for sort of creating a secret office with party funds. I mean, Christ almighty, how is that legal? How is that legal? That must be misappropriation of funds that I never knew about, that was specifically designed to undermine me and the whole movement. I would have been being dictatorial. That's a dictatorial style of leadership, and that's not what I'm about. I think that's not dictatorial. That's called fighting for what you're trying to do. What we're trying to do, more importantly, actually. It's not all about Jeremy Corbyn. It's about what we were doing on the ground. Hundreds of thousands of us bloody killing ourselves because we thought we were trying to get a Labour that gave a, pardon my French, actually gave a shit about us into power again after 4.5 decades. You know, a non-neoliberal, a non-conservative like Labour party, with you as Prime Minister, but whatever. Apparently not. Apparently, from what I saw yesterday, apparently not. Apparently, in his mind, that was never the aim. And of course, the problem is, if it had just been if people hadn't invested, like me, their entire soul, being, time, lives, health into it for 4.5 years, if people that were his actual friends, people he knew for years, like Mark Wadsworth, Jackie Walker, Chris Williamson, and others. See, my memory's terrible. My memory's terrible. I know names. Ken Livingstone. If all those people had actually been backed up, and who'd basically been pushed out specifically because they were the most vocal defenders within the Labour movement and PLP of what was trying to be done, particularly trying to change foreign policy from a pro-US war policy in Labour to a maybe we shouldn't do that, actually. You know, maybe we shouldn't be having wars everywhere like Libya and Iraq and Syria and won't go on the list. Well, they had their lives absolutely destroyed, their reputations destroyed, their lives destroyed. Most of them now no longer have anything to do with the UK Labour movement whatsoever, because they've been forced out one way or another, hounded one way or another. And he has still to this day, as far as I know, said nothing, done nothing, did nothing when he when he was in power and had some sort of voice to defend them, call out the smears and lies aimed at them for precisely because of their support for him. So it's not just a game. It's treating it like it was a game of a historical sort of. There's a history now, and it was a game of tiddlywinks or something. It wasn't. People had their lives destroyed. People had their sanity destroyed. I met Chris Williamson, along with some of my Labour colleagues at the time here, When was that? Was that just before? That was just before the election last year. He came to see us. This is after he'd been indefinitely suspended, pending investigation, which was the sort of, just it's sort of like being, it's a bit like being on bail but never being charged, with a threat of being sort of imprisoned any time without sort of warning or notice. But of course, instead of being imprisoned, you'd be kicked out of the party. If you're an MP, Labour MP has a bit of a problem, to be honest. Or a lifelong campaigner supporter like Mark Wadsworth or Jackie Walker, who's Jewish herself. All this, it's just, even now 6 months on, just to look back at what's happened and all the stuff that people were accused of, like Jackie Walker, who was Jewish, who pointed out the fact that actually maybe there wasn't a massive anti-Semitism problem within Labour. Maybe this was actually a contrived, purposely inserted narrative to try and destroy Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour movement for obvious reasons. So who wouldn't win? Of course it was. You want to talk about problems of racism within a party? Again, how come we never heard about Baroness Varsi, a Tory peer, Conservative peer, Baroness Varsi's constant year after year concerns and complaints to Theresa May, I think to David Cameron, and onwards, about the overt racist comments, actions, atmosphere towards British Muslims within the Conservative Party? How come we've never heard about that? How come we've never heard over the 4 years about the minutiae of the internal investigations and executive of the Conservative Party and their total failure and denial, complete denial, that there is as Baroness Varsi has submitted evidence about, giant historic problem and current problem with racism, racist behaviour and language at all levels within the Conservative Party. I think some distance, even if there's just 6 months. I knew this at the time, but maybe people who weren't sort of prepared to accept it at the time. Now looking back, do you not find that a bit weird that you heard about everything to do with the minutiae of the processes and the disciplinary hearings and all this sort of stuff about Labour and Jeremy Corbyn, and how he tolerates racism and anti-Semitism, but almost nothing about the Conservatives? You telling me? Are you really telling me? Come on, tell me. Right down. Are you really telling me that the Labour movement, the Labour Party, and Jeremy Corbyn, whether you like him or not, vegetarian allotment owning, peace loving, Gandhi loving Jeremy Corbyn, lifetime anti-racism campaigner Jeremy Corbyn, is a secret anti-Semite? The Labour movement is secretly anti-Semitic? But the British Conservative movement has no racism at all in it. Has no problems with racism. Again, despite the evidence brought up by Barron's, their own senior peer and a government minister, Tory minister during the last 10 years. Really? It's been 6 months now. If you voted Tory, you got what you wanted. You got Johnson. You've got the government you've got now. You got Mr. Hancock. You got Dominic Cummings. You got these inept morons who couldn't run a bleeding bath. If this hasn't demonstrated, today apparently the Financial Times has published that Britain now has, or the UK now has, the highest recorded death toll from COVID-19 in the world. in the world. Forget government figures and Office of National Statistics crap. The real figures, highest in the world, recorded in the world. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself why. If people who were competent and could do the job were in charge, that wouldn't be the case. Because it's not the case in other countries where people, may or may not like, have actually some level of competence, or actually in charge, who aren't playing, which is what Dominic Cummings, the actual Prime Minister of this country, the effective Prime Minister, because Boris Johnson, if it's not clear to you now, is utter window dressing, always was. Dominic Cummings is the actual Prime Minister. Why do you think he tried to defend and hold on to him so vehemently during the last week? Johnson, this is, about Cummings. Because he knows without Cummings, who's, Christ, I don't like saying, the brains of the operation, Mr. Eugenicist, Mr. Let the old people die. That's why we're in this position. So if you voted for them, I'm not talking about Brexit. I'm a Brexiteer, I'm an Alexiteer. I was for Brexit. I voted for Brexit. I'm not talking about Brexit, I'm talking about Tories here. I'm talking about Johnson and his bunch of criminals. Because they are now. They're mass murderers. They've stood by and watched 65,000 people, Britons, people he has a direct responsibility to keep safe and alive, if possible. Just let them die. Let them die. Let them eat cake. Remember that one? Or Marie? You know, that ended well, didn't it? Let them die. Because, of course, they're not normal people like us. He's a millionaire. He's the son of a millionaire. They're all millionaires. They're there because they're backed by the billionaires that actually own everything. And yeah, right, if you don't get me started on Labour, because I'm trying to keep it short. Well, it's nearly 40 minutes now. Don't get me started. Don't think this is some sort of Labour Tory thing. You want me to talk about Labour? Well, I think I better wait till the next one because of the time here. But yeah, let's dedicate the next one to Labour, shall we? Particularly in Wales. I'll give you my thoughts on them. Anyway, sorry, got more heated than I thought I would today. But anyway, please comment down below. Comment as you see fit. Tell me what you think. That's what I think. Tell me what you think. I always forget to say, please, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It really helps the channel. I'm trying to get a few more, bump up the viewers and subscriptions a little bit more if I can. Please hit the little bell so it'll notify you of next time I publish any more. Well, my next video anymore. I'm going to do more. Publish my next video, and stay safe. Try and stay happy if you already are. If you're not happy, I hope you get happy. And yeah, let's turn our attentions to Labour and Welsh Labour next time, mate. That'll be fun. So, you take care. Ciao for now. And it's me out.